always believed that Christopher Columbus was the man who discovered America in 1492? If that's the case, then it means no people populated America. But the truth is, various indigenous people had been living in America for thousands of years before Christopher Columbus arrived. That's when the story Europe tells, everyone starts to tremble. If Columbus was the first man to land in America, what about the people already living there? This cannot be called a discovery, but a continent knowing about something it did not know earlier. But we wonder who were the indigenous people already living in the land we call America. It's because they were the ones who discovered America for the very first time. But were they Black Africans? Welcome to a new episode of Black Afric Diary, a channel where we talk about Black African history, culture, arts, and civilization. It's a place where you will see the real picture of Black Africa, its stories and the events defining it. In this episode, we will reveal whether Black Africans were the ones who discovered America way before Columbus did. Let's get started. Throughout history, the story of Christopher Columbus as the daring explorer who discovered the Americas has been deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness. However, increasing evidence suggests that this widely accepted historical account is overly simplistic. In fact, there is compelling evidence indicating that Columbus was likely not the first non-Native American to set foot in the Americas. In the late 15th century, Europe was seized by a passion for exploration, fueled by the desire to find new trade routes to the east and the quest for wealth and power that drove the ambitions of many European nations. Existing routes to Asia were lengthy and difficult, prompting explorers to seek alternative paths to access the valuable resources of the East. It was this time when Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer, nurtured a dream of reaching Asia by sailing westward across the Atlantic. Inspired by his own geographical knowledge and theories proposed by various scholars, Columbus believed that the Earth was smaller than commonly believed. He was convinced that by sailing west, he could directly reach the eastern coast of Asia, bypassing established trade routes. However, his quest for a direct route to Asia ultimately led him to the Americas. After a lengthy and challenging voyage on October 12, 1492, Columbus and his crew sighted land now known to be one of the islands in the Bahamas. This significant event marked the first direct contact between Europe and the Americas, and Columbus earned the reputation of being the man who discovered the New World. However, this narrative is far from the truth. In fact, Columbus was one of the last known explorers to discover America, as Africans had already explored the land hundreds of years before he embarked on his journey. However, it's true that he was the first European to land in America. Since Europe liked to think of itself as the world, a flawed narrative that a European first discovered America was created. Contrary to popular belief, the presence of Black people in America might not be solely tied to slavery. However, some individuals hold the belief that Africans couldn't have discovered America before Columbus due to perceived limitations in intelligence and technology. This perspective is rooted in deeply ingrained stereotypes and prejudices that historically aim to undermine the achievements and capabilities of African civilizations. A commonly cited reason supporting the belief that Africans lacked the capability to explore and navigate the seas is the perceived absence of advanced shipbuilding technology. Critics argue that African societies did not possess the knowledge or resources to construct seafaring vessels suitable for transatlantic travel. This assumption overlooks the rich maritime traditions found in various African regions, including advanced shipbuilding skills demonstrated by cultures like the Phoenicians and Carthaginians, who had significant African influences. Modern attempts have shown that ancient African boats, even without advanced rudders or sails, could have crossed the vast ocean in a matter of weeks. A notable example is the Portuguese encounters with African boats, known as dugout canoes, during the 15th century, providing valuable insights into the capabilities of African maritime technology. Another argument against Africans' abilities is the perceived absence of navigational and astronomical knowledge among African civilizations. Some claim that Africans lacked the ability to accurately chart their courses, using stellar navigation techniques, or develop sophisticated navigational instruments. However, this assertion disregards evidence of African society's understanding of celestial bodies, such as the Dogon people's complicated knowledge of the Sirius star system. It also overlooks the sophisticated trade networks connecting African cultures across vast distances, suggesting navigational prowess. Evidence shows that West Africans sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas at least 180 years before Christopher Columbus. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. That's when you have to know about Mansa Abu Bakar II, king of the ancient kingdom of Mali in West Africa. He reigned from 1307 to 1311, when the Mali Empire was at the height of its power and wealth, spanning modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, and parts of Mauritania. The empire's economic prosperity rested on the immense wealth derived from the gold and salt trade, making Mali one of the richest empires of its time. Mansa Abu Bakar II's quest for knowledge and adventure drove him to explore the uncharted waters of the Atlantic Ocean. In 1311, he sent men with enough provisions to last for years on 200 ships to explore the limits of the ocean. He instructed them not to return until they discovered what lay beyond the Atlantic Ocean. Legend has it that only one ship managed to return. When asked about the journey, the captain recounted traveling for an extended period, navigating through an open sea with a powerful current. The other ships pressed forward, but they vanished without a trace upon reaching that location. As for the captain, he circled around it once but chose not to enter the river. Undeterred, Abu Bakar decided to assemble more ships, providing them with provisions such as food, water, livestock, gold, and other necessities. He abdicated the throne to his brother Mansa Musa and embarked on the exploration himself. However, they seemingly never returned. This raises the question, did they ever reach the Americas? The answer seems to be yes upon examining the evidence that modern historians, archaeologists, and researchers are uncovering. Today, we have evidence and sources supporting this theory. Leo Winer, a Hungarian-American historian and linguist, significantly contributed to our understanding of pre-Columbian contact between Africans and the Americas. His research highlighted the possibility that Africans had reached the Americas before Christopher Columbus, drawing evidence from Columbus's own accounts. According to Winer's book, Africa and the Discovery of America, Columbus noted in his journal that Native Americans confirmed encounters with black-skinned people from the southeast in boats, engaging in gold trade with tipped spears. The Native Americans described the spearheads as guanin, meaning gold in the Mandinka language spoken in the Mali Empire. Columbus frequently observed the abundance of gold among the natives. In West Africa, societies like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai were renowned for their gold production and trading networks. The rulers and elites adorned themselves with gold jewelry as symbols of power and social status. When Columbus encountered the indigenous peoples of the Americas, he witnessed the use of gold nose rings, earrings, pendants, and other jewelry types resembling West African gold adornments. Although Columbus didn't explicitly connect the gold jewelry of the indigenous peoples with that of West Africa, historians like Leo Winer used this observation to argue for potential trade networks or cultural exchanges between African and indigenous American populations before Columbus's arrival. Upon arriving in America, Columbus also reported seeing structures resembling mosques, suggesting a connection with the Muslim people from the Kingdom of Mali, who might have constructed these mosques. While Christopher Columbus's accounts provide valuable insights, they don't stand alone as evidence suggesting that Africans may have visited the Americas before his voyages. A particularly compelling piece of evidence is the Olmec civilization, thriving in what is now Mexico around 1200 BCE. This civilization left behind a rich legacy of art and architecture, including remarkable artifacts that fuel speculation about the possibility of an African presence in the Americas predating Columbus. Among the iconic artifacts associated with the Olmec civilization are the colossal heads and monumental stone sculptures depicting human faces. These heads, ranging from approximately 5 to 11 feet in height and weighing several tons, showcase intricate details and are believed to represent Olmec rulers or high-ranking individuals. The first Olmec head, Tres Zapotes Colossal, was unearthed by archaeologist Matthew Sterling in 1938, with 16 others subsequently discovered, contributing to the intriguing narrative. These heads exhibit physical characteristics resembling African features, such as broad noses, prominent lips, distinctive facial structures, and what some interpret as African-like facial expressions. His suggests the possibility that people of African descent inhabited the Americas centuries before Columbus's voyage, and these characteristics should not be dismissed as mere coincidences. However, recognizing African resemblances in ancient artifacts or historical contexts often encounters systemic bias, undermining the significance of Africa's contributions to global history. African civilizations, with their rich cultures and accomplishments, have frequently been marginalized and overshadowed by Eurocentric narratives. This erasure perpetuates a distorted view of history that fails to acknowledge the interconnectedness and contributions of African people to world civilizations. Despite efforts by European scholars to manipulate the truth and rewrite history, the evidence consistently indicates early African influence preceding Columbus's journey. The study of early American religions reveals intriguing similarities between certain aspects of African religions and indigenous beliefs in the Americas. One notable similarity lies in the concept of veneration of ancestors and the practice of ancestral worship. African religions often emphasize maintaining a connection with deceased ancestors, seeking their guidance and protection. Similarly, many indigenous American cultures have robust ancestral traditions, with rituals and ceremonies dedicated to honoring and communicating with their forebears. The significant focus on honoring ancestors implies potential cultural exchanges and influences between African and indigenous American societies. Evidence suggests that Africans might have journeyed to America long before Columbus, although this evidence is frequently disregarded or overlooked. Intriguing parallels emerge, ranging from the similarities between early American religions and African practices to Christopher Columbus's personal account, and the presence of Olmec heads sharing striking similarities with African facial features, all suggesting cultural exchanges and influences. Ancient African civilizations like the Egyptian, Nubian, and Aksumite kingdoms were hubs of intellectual and cultural advancements. These societies developed complex political systems, constructed monumental structures, and made substantial contributions to fields like mathematics, architecture, and medicine. Furthermore, medieval empires like Songhai, Ghana, Mali, and Benin possessed the capabilities to undertake voyages to the Americas, debunking the misconception that Africans lacked the necessary shipping technology and navigation systems. These empires were renowned for sophisticated trade networks and maritime expertise, allowing navigation across extensive stretches of the Atlantic Ocean. For instance, the Songhai Empire controlled trans-Saharan trade routes, engaging in long-distance trade and navigation. All evidence underscores Africans' sophistication in attempting to discover lands beyond their shores. Therefore, contrary to what Europe advocates, Africans were the first to discover and inhabit America thousands of years before Columbus reached it. Isn't it true that the history the world is reading has been written under the influence of Europeans? What more might be the biggest lies that Europe has told and been telling for centuries? In the comment section right below, let us know your thoughts on whether you earlier believed Columbus discovered America. Do you want to watch more videos?
To this episode. The nation of India is 1.2 billion strong and is among the fastest growing economies of the 21st century. Very much a rising world power. One thing that is not very commonly known, however, is that the civilizational roots of India lie squarely and firmly in the continent of Africa. According to respected Indian newspaper The Hindu, to find the first Indians who walked the land 65,000 years ago, thousands of years before the Aryans arrived, all you need to do is look in the mirror. Irrespective of region and language, most population groups in the country trace their ancestry to humans who migrated out of Africa and reached India. These genetic finds impress upon us the commonality of our ancestry, said writer Tony Joseph, who was speaking at the 5th annual Dr. T.K. Ramachandran Memorial Lecture on Ancient Migrations and the Politics of Prehistory. These findings endanger the conception of India as a unisource civilization with the Sanskrit Vedic culture of the Aryans as its singular foundation, he said. While the Aryan culture is an important component of Indian civilization, it is neither the only component nor the earliest. We fail to notice the imprint that the mastery of the Harappan civilization, which predates the arrival of the Aryans, has left on our culture, he said. And still another document from ancient times, the Itinerarium Alexandri, says that India, taken as a whole, beginning from the north and embracing what of it is subject to Persia, is a continuation of Egypt and the Ethiopians. Mainstream history says that the first ever journey from Africa to India was made by Vasco da Gama in 1498. But a quick look at some sculptural artwork at the famous Karnak Sun Temple, built in 1295, shows something that demolishes that idea completely. It's of an African king atop an elephant, surrounded by distinctly African-looking courtiers, and incredibly, a giraffe. And giraffes exist in Central and Southern Africa and nowhere else on Earth. It's all depicted with incredible accuracy. So this carving clearly proves that black African explorers sailed to India in mighty ships large enough to comfortably store giraffes, a full 250 years before Vasco da Gama. At this point, it is essential to emphasize that recent scientific studies of DNA confirm our understanding that modern humanity originated in Africa. These studies show without doubt that African people are the world's original inhabitants, and all modern humans can trace their ancestral lineage back to Africa. The primordial migrations of early African people were pivotal. Without these movements, humanity would have remained exclusively Africoid, and regions beyond the African continent would have lacked human life altogether. This knowledge underscores the interconnectedness of all human beings and highlights the rich and diverse tapestry of our shared ancestry rooted in Africa. India, like many other regions, bears witness to the profound influence and contributions of black people in shaping some of the world's earliest and enduring civilizations. Godfrey Higgins was a courageous English historian born in 1772 who wrote a great work titled Anacalypsis, a significant work delving into the ancient African presence in Asia. Published during a time when it was dangerous to advocate for the positive contributions of people of African descent, Anacalypsis stood out as an exceptional piece of historical research. At that period in history, most Europeans were misled into believing that Africans had made no substantial impact on world civilization. This prevailing misconception served the interests of the highly profitable slave trade, making it dangerous to acknowledge the noble and civilized history of Africans who had pioneered world civilization for thousands of years. In this hostile climate, Higgins, a graduate of Cambridge and London's Trinity Hall, and a practicing lawyer, exhibited exceptional bravery. Embarking on extensive research into the origins of nations worldwide, he fearlessly authored Anacalypsis at the age of 40. This monumental work became his most renowned publication, shining a light on the rich and overlooked history of ancient Africans in Asia and across the world, despite the risks involved. In the book he wrote, "I shall, in the course of this work, produce a number of extraordinary facts, which were quite sufficient to prove that a black race, in very early times, had more influence over the affairs of the world than has been lately suspected. And I think I shall show by some very striking circumstances yet existing that the effects of this influence have not entirely passed away." Higgins repeated the declaration by Homer, the ancient Greek philosopher, that there was in existence two major Ethiopian nations, the one in Africa, i.e. all Africa south of Egypt, and the other one, India. In fact, Herodotus, the legendary ancient Greek scholar known as the father of history, referred to India as Eastern Ethiopia. According to Higgins, there were two Ethiopias, one to the east of the Red Sea and the other to the west of it, and a very great nation of blacks did rule over almost all Asia in a very remote era, in fact, beyond the reach of history or any of our records. It was the opinion of Sir William Jones that a great nation of blacks formerly possessed the dominion of Asia and held the seat of empire at Sidon. These must have been the people called by Mr. Morris Cushites, described in Genesis, and the opinion that they were blacks is corroborated by the translators of the Pentateuch, called the 70, constantly rendering the word Cush by Ethiopia. The religion of Buddha of India is well known to have been very ancient. In the most ancient temples scattered throughout Asia, where his worship is yet continued, he is found black as jet, with a flat face, thick lips, and curly hair of the Negro. Several statues of him may be met with in the Museum of the East India Company. There are two exemplars of him, brooding in the face of the deep upon a coiled serpent. To what time are we to allot this Negro? He will be proved to have been prior to the god called Krishna. He must have been prior to or contemporaneous with the Black Empire, supposed by Sir William Jones to have flourished at Sidon. The religion of this Negro god is found by the ruins of his temples and other circumstances to have been spread over an immense extent of country, even to the remotest parts of Britain, and to have been professed by devotees inconceivably numerous. Mr. Wilford, in his treatise on Egypt and the Nile, in the Asiatic Researches, informs us that many very ancient statues of the god Buddha in India have crisp curly hair with flat noses and thick lips, and adds, nor can it be reasonably doubted that a race of Negroes formerly had power and preeminence in India. This is confirmed by Mr. Morris, who says, the figures in the Hindu caverns are of a very different character from the present race of Hindus. Their countenances are broad and full, the nose flat, and the lips, particularly the underlip, remarkably thick. Higgins compared the findings to African artifacts, saying, this is again confirmed by Conall Fitzclarence in the journal of his journey from India, and Morris in the first volume of his Indian Antiquities states that the figures in the caves in India and in the temples in Egypt are absolutely the same. In my essay on the Celtic Druids, I have shown that a great nation called Celtae, of whom the Druids were the priests, spread themselves almost over the whole earth, and are to be traced in their gigantic monuments from India to the extremity of Britain. Who these can have been, but the early individuals of the black nation of whom we have been treated, I know not, and in this opinion I am not singular. The learned Morris says, Cushites built the great temples in India and Britain, and excavated the caves of the former, and the learned mathematician Reuben Burrow has no hesitation in pronouncing Stonehenge to be a temple of the black, curly-headed Buddha. The famous Italian explorer Marco Polo, after visiting the Pandyan kingdom of India in 1288, wrote that, the darkest man here is the most highly esteemed, and considered better than the others who are not so dark. Let me add that in very truth, these people portray and depict their gods and their idols black, and their devils white as snow. For they say that God and all the saints are black, and the devils are all white. That is why they portray them as I have described. According to scholars, more than 1,000 years before the foundations of Greece and Rome, proud and industrious black men and women, known as the Dravidians, erected a powerful civilization in the Indus Valley. From these origins, African kings in India drove the region's commerce, culture, and belief systems. The Indus Valley civilization was at its height from about 2200 BCE to 1700 BCE. This phase of its history is called the Harappan, the name being derived from Harappa, one of the earliest known Indus Valley cities. In 1922, about 350 miles northeast of Harappa, another large Indus city, Mohenjo-Daro, was identified. Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were apparently the chief administrative centers of the Indus Valley complex, and since their identification, several additional cities, including Chandhu-Daro, Kalibangan, Quetta, and Lothal, have been excavated. The Indus cities possessed multiple level houses enhanced by sophisticated wells, drainage systems, and bathrooms with flushing toilets. A recognized scholar on the Indus Valley civilization, Dr. Walter Fairservice, states that the Harappans cultivated cotton and perhaps rice, domesticated the chicken, and may have invented the game of chess and one of the two great early sources of non-muscle power, the windmill. And historian Clyde Winters informs us that Ethiopians have had very intimate relations with Indians. In fact, in antiquity, the Ethiopians ruled much of India. These Ethiopians were called the Naga. It was the Naga who created Sanskrit. A region of ancient Dravidian literature, which dates back to 500 BC, gives us considerable information on the Naga. In Indian tradition, the Naga won central India from the Villavar, bowmen, and Minavar, fishermen. He states that even the legends of India revere the black race that laid the foundation of their civilization, and the holiest books of India also affirm that enlightenment came from Ethiopia. In fact, the first god of India is a dreadlocked black man called Shiva. Winters also tells us about Shahzada Koja Babak, the Ethiopian who conquered the Bengal kingdom and established the Habshi dynasty in 1487. We know that he was a Sidi. The Sidi, also known as Sawahili and Habshi, are an ethnic group inhabiting India and Pakistan. Members are descended from the Bantu peoples of the East African region. Winters informs us of a quite intriguing episode in the reign of this great African king. According to coins found bearing his name, he reigned from 1487 to 1490, 3 years. He secured peace and comfort for his subjects, was matchless in his generosity, and bestowed on the poor the treasures and largesse of past sovereigns who had hoarded the same with considerable exertions and pains. A story from the Bibliotheca India illustrates his empathy for the poor. The members of government did not like his generosity towards the poor and used to say to one another, "This Abyssinian does not appreciate the value of the money which has fallen into his hands without toil and labour." We also said about discovering the means by which he might be taught the value of money and to withhold his hand from useless extravagance and lavishness. Then they collected that treasure on the floor, that the king might behold it with his own eyes, and, appreciating its value, might attach value to it. When the king saw the treasure, he inquired, "Why is this treasure left in this place?" The members of the government said, "This is the same treasure that you allotted to the poor." The king said, "How can this amount suffice? Add another lakh to it." Today you can still visit the mosque, a tower, and the reservoir in the city of Gar erected by this generous African king. Among the distinguished figures in the Indo-African community, Malik Ambar, who lived from 1550 to 1626, emerged as a celebrated leader. Originally named Shambu, he was born around 1550 in Hara, Ethiopia. Upon his arrival in India, he exhibited exceptional military prowess, assembling a formidable army and gaining significant influence in the western Indian realm of Ahmadnagar. Ambar proved himself as a brilliant diplomat, tactician and administrator. In 1590, he broke away from Bijapur and established an independent mercenary army comprising over 1,500 African, Arab and local Dakkani men. Later, he aligned himself with the state of Ahmadnagar and took control, imprisoning King Murtaza II and assuming the title of Regent Minister. Ambar championed minorities from diverse ethnic backgrounds, placing them in key positions within his administration. He also implemented essential financial, educational and agricultural reforms, earning accolades from contemporaries like Ferishta, an Arab historian who hailed him as the most enlightened financier in Indian history. Ambar's military acumen was equally impressive. He organized a robust cavalry of 60,000 horses and repelled Mughal forces for 2 decades, preventing the conquest of Deccan until his passing. His legacy as a resilient and visionary leader endures till this day. During the 16th century, India witnessed the influential presence of numerous Habshi individuals in its political landscape. Among them was Chinggis Khan, an African statesman who served as the prime minister to Nizam-ul-Mulk Bani, the king of Ahmadnagar, in 1575. Following the king's demise, his son Murtaza I held a successful rebellion with several Habshi supporters against his mother's claim to power. In 1595, during Murtaza II's rule, Abangar Khan, also of Habshi origin, held the position of prime minister. Over time, the Habshi communities have diminished due to extensive intermarriage with other Muslims. Nonetheless, their enduring influence is evident in the facial features of the present-day inhabitants and the local architecture. The individuals mentioned here represent just a fraction of the Abyssinian, Habshi, Ethiopian and Dravidian rulers, leaders and scholars who have significantly shaped contemporary India. Their historical presence underscores the need for further research, reaffirming what many already understand, that African men and women played a vital role in illuminating the path of civilization for India and the rest of the world. According to scholars, the decline and fall of the Indus Valley civilization has been linked to several factors, the most important of which were the increasingly frequent incursions of the white people known in history as Aryans, violent Indo-European tribes initially from Central Eurasia and later Iran. Indeed, the name Iran means land of the Aryan. According to legendary Senegalese historian Cheikh Anta Diop, there are 2 well-defined black races. One has a black skin and woolly hair, the other also has black skin, often exceptionally black, with straight hair, aquiline nose, thin lips and acute cheekbone angle. We find a prototype of this race in India, the Dravidian. It is also known that certain Nubians likewise belong to the same Negro type. Thus, it is inexact anti-scientific to do anthropological research, encounter a Dravidian type, and then conclude that the Negro type is absent. Given this history of African presence and magnificence in early India, what then gave rise to the racist caste system practiced in India today? According to Dr. V. Annamalai, the roots of the Indian Hindu caste system lie in the discrimination against the black Dravidian people of ancient India after the Aryan conquest of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, also called the Mohenjo-Daro and Harappan civilization. Dr. Annamalai suggests that the Harappan civilization was created by black people from Africa's kingdom of ancient Ethiopia, dating back possibly to 7000 BC, and called the Dravidians. These black Dravidians of ancient India created a highly advanced civilization in the Indus Valley region, which included agriculture, building, and sanitation systems. The ancient Dravidian civilization in India was indeed prosperous and peaceful. Around 5000 BC, the region saw the arrival of nomadic groups from the Mediterranean, followed later by white Aryans from Central Asia between 3000 to 2000 BC. The Aryans, already adept in warfare and horse domestication, clashed with the settled Dravidian population. This conflict lasted for several centuries, led to intermarriage, and resulted in a mixed society with diverse skin tones. After the conquest, the Aryans classified the population based on their skin tone, with the purest white group at the top, followed by other groups of varied shades. This historical context highlights the complex interactions and social stratifications that occurred in ancient India, shaping the diverse population we see today. Positions, jobs, and trades were thus organized according to skin color, with the purest color white having access to the highest positions, right down to the last rank, reserved for those with the darkest skin tone, who were the black Dravidians. Indeed, the term Dravidian holds significance not only in its ethnic context, but also as a crucial language family spoken by over 100 million people, primarily in South India. This linguistic group comprises languages such as Tamil, which is the largest among them, along with Kannada, Malayalam, Telugu, and Tulu. It's interesting to note that the term Dravidian is believed to be an Aryan corruption of the Tamil language, highlighting the complex historical interactions between different linguistic and cultural groups in the region. The Dravidians were an unusually advanced seafaring people, with the Cholas in particular distinguishing themselves among the dominant maritime powers of their era. The great kings of Chola traded with Ethiopia and Somalia, Iran and Arabia, Cambodia and China, Sumatra and Sri Lanka, exporting spices and camphor, ebony and ivory, quality textiles and precious jewels. The Dravidian kingdoms and the Dravidian people were well known internationally. When Augustus became head of the Roman world, for example, the Dravidian kingdom sent him a congratulatory embassy. Dravidian poets describe Roman ships which carried bodyguards of archers to wards of pirates, while the Dravidian kings themselves employed Roman soldiers as bodyguards. In respect to the ancient East, at least one author has identified a Dravidian presence in the Philippines, noting that from India came civilized Indians, the Dravidians, from whom the savage Aryans learned. They began at least 500 BC and soon controlled the coast. The invasion of India by the Aryans led to significant changes in the existing civilizations. The Aryans, distinguished by their aggressive nature and glorification of martial virtues, gradually subdued much of northern India after centuries of intense conflict. Following their conquest, the Aryans established a rigid caste segmented social order in the vanquished territories. In this hierarchical system, the conquered blacks, known as Shudras, were essentially reduced to a state of servitude, serving the Aryans in various capacities. This new social structure was undeniably racist, with whites at the top, mixed-race individuals in the middle, and the majority of black people placed at the very bottom. The term used for social status, Varna, which was interchangeable with the concept of caste, literally translates to color or complexion. This term reflected and perpetuated a prevailing racial hierarchy, reinforcing the social divisions based on race and ethnicity. The consequences of this historical stratification are a testament to the enduring impact of these ancient societal structures on the fabric of Indian society. While it's true that some members of the black aristocracy managed to find a place within the dominant white social structure, the majority of the conquered black population faced a harsh reality. In the eyes of the whites, these masses were considered inferior, representing untruth itself. Over time, this harsh and racially based caste system, rooted in color-oriented discrimination, evolved into the foundational structure of Hinduism, the religion practiced throughout India. This deeply ingrained social hierarchy left a profound mark on the religious and cultural landscape of the country, shaping the lives and destinies of millions for centuries. The plight of the untouchables in India is a tragic tale of historical discrimination and social injustice. Comprising a significant percentage of black people in Asia, India's 160 million untouchables are the descendants of Aryan, Sudra, Unions, and native black populations. These marginalized communities retreated into the remote hinterland of India in an attempt to escape the expanding Aryan influence, yet eventually succumbed to the Aryan sphere of dominance. To put their numbers into perspective, India's untouchables surpass the combined populations of several European countries such as England, France, Belgium, and Spain. Unfortunately, their status has changed little since ancient times. Presently, caste Hindus continue to impose restrictions on them, forbidding them from wearing shoes, riding bicycles, using umbrellas, or even holding their heads high while walking in the streets. In urban areas, untouchables are often crowded into squalid slums. In rural regions, where the majority of them reside, they are exploited as landless agricultural laborers, subjected to intimidation and terror, perpetuating their cycle of poverty and discrimination. This systemic oppression remains a dark stain on India's social fabric, highlighting the urgent need for comprehensive social reform and equal rights for all. So the utterly barbaric treatment of these descendants of the African founders of Indian civilization remains a tragic cultural stain, a putrid reproach on the heritage of this nation. Nawab Sidi Hyder Khan served as the ruler of Sachin, an African-ruled state established in Gujarat in 1791. This unique state boasted its own cavalry, state bands with African members, distinctive coat of arms, currency, and stamped paper. The influence of Africans extended not only to the Deccan sultanates in southern India, but also along the western coast. They sometimes seized power collectively, forming groups like the Abyssinian Party in Bengal in the 1480s, or individually, as seen with leaders like Sidi Masood in Adoni and Malik Ambar in Ahmadnagar. Many of these African figures from the past have left a significant mark on history, yet their ethnicity has often been overlooked or forgotten, intentionally or unintentionally, similar to experiences in many other parts of the world. Dr. Sylvain A. Diouf of the Schomburg Center says Africans were successful in India because of their military prowess and administrative skills. African men were employed in very specialized jobs. They were able to rise through the ranks, becoming generals, admirals, and administrators. The spiritual traditions of the country are easily traceable to Africa, of course, and scholars have observed that manifestations of the Buddha in Asia are black with woolly hair. They all appear to be Egypto-Nubian priests who fled Egypt. The priests carried their spiritual knowledge but lost much of the scientific knowledge for obvious reasons. The well-known aspects of Buddhism and its companion yoga are all Egypto-Nubian priesthood practices, meditation and the belief that one could attain a godlike state if the soul was liberated from the body through knowledge and denial. In a monumental 2-volume work entitled A Book of the Beginnings, originally published in 1881, Gerald Massey recorded that it is certain that the Black Buddha of India was imaged in the Africoid type. In the black gods, whether called Buddha or Sutnasi, we have a datum. They carry in their color the proof of their origin. The people who first fashioned and worshipped the divine image in the Africoid mold of humanity must, according to all knowledge of human nature, have been Africans themselves. For the blackness is not merely mystical. The features and the hair of Buddha belong to the black race. In the second decade of the 16th century, a European traveller named Armando Cortesero noted that the people who govern the kingdom, Bengal, are Abyssinians, Ethiopians. These men are looked upon as knights. They are greatly esteemed. They wait on the kings in their apartments. The chief among them are eunuchs, and these come to be kings and great lords in the kingdom. Those who are not eunuchs are the fighting men. After the king, it is to these people that the kingdom is obedient from fear. The Sidis were a tightly knit group, highly aggressive and even ferocious in battle. They were employed largely as security forces for Muslim fleets in the Indian Ocean, a position they maintained for centuries. The city commanders were titled admirals of the Mughal Empire, received an annual salary of 300,000 rupees. According to Ibn Battuta, the noted Muslim writer who journeyed through both Africa and Asia, the Sidis are the guarantors of safety on the Indian Ocean. Let there be but one of them on a ship, and it will be avoided by the Indian pirates and idolaters. The 2014 exhibition at the Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts was titled Africans in India, A Rediscovery, which revealed to the Indian public images of ancient African participation in Indian public life. Discussing one of the paintings shown, an official at the exhibition said, "This painting hints at a more open-minded Indian society in the past. It didn't distinguish between whites and blacks. The idea behind our exhibition was to showcase this multicolored picture of India and the contributions the Africans made towards completing it. We chose the title because the Indian masses do not know much about the Afro-Indian community. Through these stories, people will know that Africans did not come to India yesterday and will get an insight into the rich history of Afro-Indians. Even DUI students of African studies said they didn't know so much about the African contribution until they came here. So you can imagine how much the common man knows. What we Indians basically need to do is revisit the past. The past will open our eyes to the present and future, and maybe we will find our famed tolerance and open-mindedness that we left behind somewhere back in time." Thanks for watching this episode.
Saying my ancestors don't play about me. I am who? I am me.
They really want to try to stop me. Remember, I can't be stopped.
Flow like the wind. Slow like the wind. Breathe out. Breathe in.
Stop projecting. It has nothing to do with me, it's you. When you begin to realize that most people are projecting, you won't take anything personal. We all been through some shit, but it's time to heal. Release. Let go. Releasing shame. Releasing doubt. Activating our crown. We are connected with the moon and the stars. Us women are. We are. Twisted dark fantasy. No commitment. All submission.